So Michael will start off with a Plains, followed by a Lotus Petal, and then a Deafening Silence. Very strong start. And he'll pass the turn. Here we move to Alex. Alex is playing a fetch land for turn to get a Taiga. Plays a Chrome Mox, exiling a white card. And then we'll cast a Drannith Magistrate. Also very strong start from Alex. And here we go to Mike. Play a Polluted Delta as land for turn. Fetch. Explain a little bit of shortcutting. And then plays a Ragavan and passes. So then we move on to Rosta. Rosta is going to draw a card. Play a Command Tower. Play a Mox Diamond, pitching one of those beautiful islands. And passes the turn. Passing to Michael, we're going to untap, upkeep, draw. Play land for turn. Crack the Lotus Petal for a land tax. That's the only non-creature spell for a turn. That'll tap 2. Then casting a Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, making every non-creature spell cost 1 additional. Then we pass to Alex. Untap, upkeep, draw. Land for turn. Shocking. We're going to tap 3 mana for a Minsc. It's going to create that furry little friend. And then turn sideways at Rosta. Rosta will take 1 damage, going to 39. And Alex will pass the turn. Passing the turn to Mike. Untap, upkeep, draw. Mike's gonna swing with Ragavan at Rosta. Ragavan will exile a Soul Ring. Mike will then cast his own Soul Ring. And then Mike passes the turn. Untap, upkeep, and draw for Rosta. Rosta will pay 2 life and a colorless for a Gataxian Probe. Looking at Mike's hand. After Mike reveals that hand to Rosta, Rosta will draw a card, and Rosta will pass the turn. Michael will untap, upkeep, and draw. Michael will pay 2 mana for a Lion Sash, and then pass the turn. Alex will untap, upkeep, and draw. Takes a minute to organize the board and plays an Ancient Tomb as land for turn. 1 mana for a Tender Wall. Move to combat and swing the Furry Little Friend. Furry Little Friend is once again going at Rosta. Gonna pay some mana into that friend using Minsc to make it bigger. This time, the Furry Little Friend is a 4/4. He'll pass the turn to Mike. Mike will untap, upkeep, and draw. Play a Flooded Strand as land for turn. Mike's thinking about moving to combat, but instead fetches. Grabs a Tundra. then moves to combat with Ragavan. Ragavan once again hitting Rosta. It'll exile a land, but Mike gets to make a treasure. Mike will pass to Rosta, untap, upkeep, and draw. Plays a Arid Mesa as land for turn, fetch, go and grab a Taiga, and Rosta will pass. Michael, untap, upkeep, fetch some lands off of land tax, draw. Michael will then play a Plains as land for turn, then use the colorless land and the Plains to equip Lion Sash to Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, then pass the turn. Untap, upkeep, and draw for Alex. Alex will cast a Carpet of Flowers. That's the non-creature spell for turn. Paying 4 mana into Minsc to make Boo a 4/4, once again attacking Rosta. On Alex's instep, Mike would like to cast a Memory Deluge, paying the extra for Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. In response to Memory Deluge, Rosta would like to fire off a crop rotation, sacrificing Taiga. Crop rotation is going to go find an Ancient Tomb, and the Memory Deluge will resolve. Then we move to Mike, untap, upkeep, and draw. Wooded Foothills is land for turn. Cast a Mystic Remora. Crack Wooded Foothills. Search for a Taiga. And then cast a Spellseeker. Mike is going to use Spellseeker to search his library for a Cyclonic Rift. Gives it a quick shuffle. Mike is going to go to combat and swing Ragavan at Rosta, creating a treasure and exiling another card. And then Mike will pass the turn. Rosta untaps, upkeeps, and draws. Casts a Lotus Petal. Mystic Remora trigger. Mike will draw. A little bit of politicking back and forth. Rosta will pass the turn. Michael untap, upkeeps, and draws. Plays a land for turn. And then casts a Skyclave Apparition. There's a few huffs and puffs from the opponents, but it will resolve. Michael is going to target the Soul Ring from Mike. Moving on to Alex. Untap, upkeep, and draw. First main phase, trigger Carpet. Activate Minsc to make Boo a 5/5 this time. And it's coming at Rosta in combat. Afterwards, Alex will pass the turn. Moving on to Mike. Untap, upkeep, and draw. Looks like we have a little bit of thought here before going to combat with Ragavan. Ragavan will hit Rosta, creating a treasures. Play an Ancient Tomb as land for turn. A lot of thought here, a lot of discussion at the table. There's a lot of threats at the table here. Things like Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, Lion Sash, Deafening Silence, Dranith Magistrate. Lots to remove or needs to be worked through to try and win the game. And then we're going to see a Solve the Equation come from Mike. Now this will be his only non-creature spell this turn, so that Cyclonic Rift's gonna stay in the hand. Solve the Equation grabs Intuition. Really good choice. Mike is going to pass the turn to Rosta. Rosta will untap, upkeep, and draw. Not much to do here. Pass the turn. Passing over to Michael. Michael will untap, upkeep, and draw. Play an Inventor's Fair as land for turn. And then move to combat, swinging Skyclave Apparition at Mike. Mike takes the damage. And then we move to Alex's turn. Untap, upkeep, and draw. Trigger Carpet of Flowers. Make 2 white mana. Cast Gamble. 2 cards in hand, so it's a 50-50 shot of going to the graveyard or staying in hand. Ooh, we're gonna put an Academy Rector into the graveyard. Two mana for a Bloom Tinder. Move to combat and swing Minsc and Boo at Mike. That's a lot of damage. Mike is going to cast a Dress Down on the instep. Looks like Mike is going to cast a Dress Down here. Now this is very interesting. There's going to be a lot of politicking here on this Dress Down. Looks like Rosta passes the turn, and Michael is saying that that needs to get countered. Since Rosta already passed priority on the Dress Down, Michael will have to tap a land to reset priority, since that is a game action in multiplayer, to allow Rosta to Force of Will the Dress Down. Moving on to Mike's turn. Untap, upkeep, and draw. Mike's moving straight to combat here. Swinging Ragavan at Rosta. Exiling an Urza Saga will make a treasure. We'll see a Grand Abolisher from Mike. Lots of politicking about this Grand Abolisher, seeing if it will resolve. Checking out some graveyards here, seeing what Mike has available. Draw a card. Grand Abolisher will resolve. Mike will cast a Lotus Petal and then pass the turn to Rosta. Untap, upkeep, and draw. Rosta will play a Mox Amber, and Rosta will pass the turn. Michael untaps, upkeeps, and draws. Tapping 3 mana. Casting a Rest in Peace. This is a very strong Stax piece against this board. Really does shut down every deck. If the Lion Sash wasn't enough, the Deafening Silence wasn't enough, and the Thalia wasn't enough, this definitely makes it enough. Tap a significant amount of mana here. And Michael passes the turn to Alex. Alex will untap, adjust that board a little bit, draw. Trigger Carpet of Flowers. There's a lot of politicking going on at the table. Gotta make sure that certain things don't get removed, especially with players attempting to win the game at any moment. Michael has a really good lock on this game right now, so if the wrong thing gets removed, it could very well be the end. We're going to activate Minsc, making Boo very large, and we're going to swing it at Mike. Alex will pass the turn. Untap, upkeep, and draw for Mike. Mike will swing Ragavan at Rosta, exiling Talisman of Curiosity. Under a Grand Abolisher, feeling very comfortable, at least on their own turn. Mike will pass the turn. Rosta will untap, upkeep, and draw. Rosta's going to cast this Oath of Druids. Alex is going to take a gander. It looks like it resolves, and Rosta will pass to Michael. Michael will trigger the Oath of Druids, reveal from the top of their library until he sees Walking Ballista. You may cast Walking Ballista. It's gonna go to exile because Walking Ballista is a 0/0, so even if it's casted, it will die anyway and go to the graveyard. Rest in Peace will put it into exile instead. Michael will play Land for turn. Michael will swing with Skyclave Apparition and Thalia Guardian of Thraben at Mike. And Mike's gonna block with a Spellseeker. taking the damage from the Skyclave apparition. Michael will tap 3 mana to cast a Seal of Cleansing. Seal of Cleansing says sacrifice, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Tapping 2 mana for a Painter's Servant. This right here is a combo piece. The board's going to talk about it. This card commonly combos with a card called Grindstone. After some careful consideration, Painter's Servant will resolve, and looks like we're passing the turn. Alex will untap, upkeep, and draw. Alex will cast a Dockside Extortionist. If no one does anything, this is going to make a lot of treasures. After a lot of commotion on the board, Mike cracks 2 treasures, his Lotus Petal, and taps all of his mana to overload a Cyclonic Rift in response to Dockside Extortionist. In response, Rosta will tap 2 mana and cast a Dispel, countering the Cyclonic Rift. The Dispel will resolve. Mike would like to activate Inventor's Fair and search their library for that Grindstone. Dockside Extortionist ETB trigger back on the stack. We're going to make a quick calculation of how many artifacts and enchantments Alex's opponents control. Now that the combo piece has been revealed, there's a lot of communication going on between Mike, Rosta, and Alex about where this boost should be going. And since Michael has Rest in Peace, all of these cards that would be getting milled due to Grindstone will be getting milled into exile. So these cards would not be coming back. Alex is tapping a lot of mana, tanking 2 damage, going to 29. Activating Minsc. targeting Boo, making Boo very large. Swinging both Boo and Minsc at Mike. Mike chooses to block Minsc with Grand Abolisher, taking the damage from Boo. Going to 1. After some careful consideration of changing phases, Michael will sacrifice the Seal of Cleansing to blow up the Oath of Druids. And then Alex will pass the turn. Mike untaps, upkeeps, and draws. Plays a Forbidden Orchard as land for turn. Moves to combat and swings Ragavan at Rosta. Ragavan will exile a Muddle the Mixture. After creating a treasure and a little bit of politicking. After creating that treasure and a little bit of politicking, Mike's gonna pass the turn. Take a further examination at this Grindstone that Michael has presented. And politicking ensues. Looks like Rosa passed the turn. Michael untaps, upkeeps, and draws. Michael would like to then move to combat, swinging Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, and Skyclave Apparition. In response to attackers being declared, Mike would like to cast an Intuition, giving Rosta a 1/1 spirit. Rosta is going to see the 3 cards that are presented to him from Mike off of the Intuition, and Rosta chooses to give Mike the Swords to Plowshares. Combat damage will resolve, and Mike is out of the game. Moving on to Alex's turn. Alex will untap, upkeep, and draw. Alex will move to combat. Alex swings the team at Rosta. Alex swings the team at Rosta, activating Minsc to make Boo bigger. Rosta will block the Bloom Tender, and Bloom Tender will die. Rosta will go to 1. On Alex instep, Rosta will cast Turn the Earth. He doesn't have any cards to target, however, he can gain 2 life. Then, in Alex's instep, Michael will activate Grindstone, targeting Rosta, and saying, "That's cool and all, mill your library into exile." Going into Rosta's turn, Rosta will draw an empty library and lose the game. In Rosta's instep, Alex will fire off an Abrade, destroying the Grindstone. Michael will untap, upkeep, and draw. Michael will activate Inkmoth Nexus, making it a 1/1 Blinkmoth artifact creature with flying and infect until end of turn. It is still a land. And Michael will equip the Lion Sash to the Inkmoth Nexus and swing with the Inkmoth Nexus at Alex. In second main phase, Michael will cast a Maze Mind Tome and then pass the turn to Alex. Alex will untap, adjust the board a bit as an upkeep, and we'll draw. Alex would like to tap 4 mana for an Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing Dockside Extortionist as cost. This allows Alex to go and get a creature CMC 4 or less from the library into the battlefield. Alex would like to also grab a Skyclave Apparition. Skyclave Apparition is going to exile Lion Sash. Alex still has a lot to work through to get through this board, but it is still doable. In Alex's instep, Michael would like to use Maze Mind Tome's second ability to pay 2 colorless, tap Maze Mind Tome, put a page counter on Maze Mind Tome to draw a card. And then Michael will untap. Untap, upkeep, and draw. Michael will use Maze Mind Tome's second ability once again to draw a card. There's a lot of discussion at the table here, and looks like the game is over. And Michael is our winner. The only difference here being, didn't have to get the opponent to 0 to get them to concede. Stay tuned for our next game. Coming out soon, round 3 of Marchesa 2022. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your night, and thanks again for tuning in.